I wasn't sure I was going to do this episode, but a little voice inside my head said, press record. But not before I took a bit of a break in December. I've got to be honest with you. I've been in the overwhelm. And being the perfectionist that I can be, at times I tend to push myself a little too hard. You know what I'm talking about? Maybe sometimes way too hard. Look, we have so many positive things coming your way in 2024, but before I decided to take a deep dive, this girl really needed a timeout to be kind to my own mind. After all, I can't just speak it. I have to live it, right? So I took some time for rest and restore, and here we are. 2023 brought such an incredible playlist of episodes this year, and it's because of you. It's because of you that Holistically Speaking keeps getting better and better every year. We're up for a few awards in 2024. I've shared the stage to speak about how to hug it out and be kind to your mind, and people are listening. You're listening. But before we go any further, I do want to remind you that if you are a podcaster or you are thinking about starting a podcast, I hope you're planning to attend Podfest Expo and She Podcast Live Unplugged in Orlando at the end of January. And I'm going to tell you why, because I'm going to be there. I'll be kicking off the event on Thursday, January 25th. I'll be speaking on how you can retrain your brain and hug it out with yourself. This is a special event, and I really want you there. It's hosted by She Podcast Live, and it's going to be an amazing opportunity to learn more about podcasting and really how to embrace this culture. Because let's be honest, whether you are a podcaster or not, we all need to unplug every now and then, right? I have a special link on my website to get 20% off your ticket to She Podcast Live Unplugged, and even find out more about Podfest Expo. And that's if you want to stay for the entire 5 days. It's going to be amazing. There's a lot of events going on, and it's going to be a blast. And by the way, I would love to meet you. So definitely take a look at that on my website. The links will be on the listen notes of this podcast. Okay, on with the show. I have to admit that it was hard to whittle down a year's worth of episodes. We've had so many great conversations here on Holistically Speaking, but there were definitely a number of conversations that told me that you were truly tuning in. I mean, really tuning in. Like Jessica Buchanan. You remember her story? It made national headlines after she spent 93 days as a hostage in the middle of the Somali desert, barely living in unthinkable conditions. And her rescue was close to a miracle. And she shared what was going on in her mind during that time on episode 122. Take a listen.
I just remember, I don't know if I said it out loud, but if it was just inside my head and my heart, like, please help me be strong. Please help me be dignified, because I felt very sure that I was walking like toward my own execution.
While Jessica's story is definitely one for the books, sometimes the bad guys are a little closer to home. And that's what happened with psychotherapist and runner Vanessa Reiser. She dodged the bullet big time, not marrying the narcissist. But she also gave new meaning to the term runaway bride. Her story, Running from the Narcissist, is episode 126.
It just rattled me. It was the scariest thing I could have ever imagined. So, was I safe? No, I was traumatized. I was afraid he was going to kill me. I still think about that. Sometimes I run with a GoPro. I have cameras everywhere. But I do believe that, I vacillate. I'll be honest. I do vacillate. Sometimes I'm thinking it's just puffing out the feathers, intimidating. And then I wonder about the impulsivity of it all, the sociopathy of it all. So I'm not sure. But I can't not do the work. I can't not support all of the victims that are suffering in silence, because they are in the judicial system and they can't speak out because their children will be harmed. So because I did not I don't have to co-parent with this monster. And because I am a clinician, I feel I have no choice but to just sort of march forward.
I imagine you or someone you know has been in an unhealthy relationship at some time or another, myself included. And it takes a lot of inner healing, understanding, and gratitude to truly grow. That's the hug it out method in action. When you take time for yourself, right? And if I've learned one thing about relationships, it's if you want to find that person, the right person, you have to make the list and then you have to be the list. You have to have healthy boundaries and also be a good communicator. And that means being a great listener too, right? It's a dance, it's connection, it's respect, whether it's in partnership or in community and friendship. And if anyone can speak to that topic, it is Good Vibes Guy, JD Roberto. Here's what he shared during episode 130 of Let Your Vibe Attract Your Tribe.
One of the things I realized was that because I am such a good talker, I can win any argument I want to, especially with someone who's not a professional talker. And that is absolutely toxic in a relationship, right? I had to learn in the first few years of our relationships that being the best talker didn't make you right, and that it was better to shut up and listen, and that to a degree, being happy is way more important than being right. And it took me some time to learn that. And fortunately, she was patient with me. But we don't fight much. And when we do, we fight well. We fight in a kind, we're going to work through this way. And always with the knowledge that we're going to get to the other side of this. Fighting is annoying, for whatever reason, we're at odds about something, but we're going to get to the other side of it. The stakes are always low and we're always respectful.
The beautiful thing about this podcast is that I learned so much from my guests and my listeners as well. And I say it time and time again that this podcast is truly a masterclass in how to live your best life. So here's one topic that really raised some eyebrows. I waited a long time to cover this topic, and I wanted to book the right person. And I wanted to book Tantra sexpert Dominique DeVita because you can't just talk Tantra. You got to know what you're talking about, right? So on episode 117, we not only dig deep into the world of tantric sex, but the sexual energy you need for the ultimate soulgasm.
So often what we see is people can have sex skin to skin. You know, we could be naked with someone or it could be performative, but can we really connect to someone's soul? Do we really have the skills to do that? And we usually don't. But then in our society, we're like, oh, I really wish I could find a soulmate. How are you going to find a soulmate if you don't know how to have soulful sex? Tantra creates soulmates because you're able to connect with someone at that depth, at those levels.
Some topics are just more difficult to cover than others. And there are times when an episode just truly moves me. And then I hear from you and I know that it's done the same. So around the time I was turning 50 years old in 2023, I really started thinking about my why. Why didn't I have children? That was the big question that kept coming up for me. And I shared rather openly in episode 121. And then I asked you to do the same by sharing your stories. And you were open about it. And it was beautiful. But here's how it all began.
I am not a parent. I do not have children. And when I say those words out loud, sometimes it hits me differently than when I say it to myself or when I'm holding space for myself or somebody else. I wasn't one of those people that held on to the, oh my gosh, I need a child. I want a child. And I know people like that. And there's nothing wrong with that because we each have this role or this feeling that resonates with us about motherhood and fatherhood, parenthood. And I've had many of these conversations with clients, with friends, in regular conversation, just with people that I've met. And what I realized is that every one of us that doesn't have children has our own story and our own reason why. In some way, I'm still trying to figure out what my why is. Where I wanted to go with this episode was really just to give you a little insight about me and share openly and honestly about my personal story so that it's a safe container for you to share yours.
Let me just say thank you to all of you who did share, all those voices that were open about being child-free or childless. And if you want to hear those stories, they're on episode 124. Your vulnerability is your courage, and you're never alone. Okay, we're switching gears here. Let's talk TikTok. I have to admit, I am more of a Tik stalker than a TikToker. I love the content that I seem to come across, mainly because I found some really incredible guests through using that app. One of them was Daniel Patterson, a recovering alcoholic who has found a way to blend trauma and comedy. And he calls it traumedy. What else, right? It's a way that he connects with kids struggling with their emotional well-being, something he discovered from Life After Booze on episode 123.
I am one giant receipt that you can continue to heal. Because after that attempt, was I better? No, I went into a full addiction. It wasn't until I got the clinical care that I needed that I could really quit the drinking. And let me ask you a question, Hilary. What do, if somebody asks you what to do if you catch on fire, what do you say?
If someone asks me, say that
Like
again.
This is what I did when I was in the assembly. I asked the kids, okay, if you're going to catch on fire, what do you do? And they all yelled the same answer. It's like a little slogan.
Oh, did they stop, drop, and roll thing?
Stop, drop, and roll.
Right.
Right. That's the kind of messaging. That's the kind of slogan. That's the kind of branding that I'm trying to bring to adolescent mental health. What do you do when you feel this way? All of the kids knew. All of the kids, 2023. What do you do if you catch on fire? We stop, drop, and roll. Whole auditorium. What do you do if you feel like you want to harm yourself? Crickets.
Silence.
Addiction comes in many forms, and we've covered a lot of them on this show over the past couple of years. But when Amber Romaniak opened up about her relationship with food, she wasn't sugarcoating a thing, and I really mean that. On episode 127, Amber shares openly about how she went from self-sabotage to body freedom.
So I went into the kitchen, pulled out my garbage, pulled out the food and ate it, and just felt absolutely embarrassed and just, started crying on the floor and just thought, like, how is this my life? How am I sitting here on my apartment kitchen floor eating out of a garbage? Like, I never could have imagined that this was going to be my life.
Now, sometimes even those in the best physical condition face the toughest hurdles in life. And that's the story for Hall of Famer Ciara Lindley. She's one of the best triathletes in the world. But this cancer survivor, she didn't always see the finish line. So on episode 118, Ciara shared how she is finding her way in life and how she has found her way and what it takes to go from the impossible to the possible.
Any kind of a sport is kind of failure driven because we're never good at something right away. So as you're learning to become good at something, you're failing over and over and over again. But the key is that as an athlete, I knew that I was always going to somehow find a way to get good at this, find a way to, not come in dead last the next time, but go a little bit faster or handle that disappointing result a little bit better.
I could go on forever about the guests and the topics that we have had on this show. And what I want to know from you is, what's your favorite? Was it one of the ones you heard here today during this episode? And if there's another one, let me know. I want to hear from you. And if there's a guest or a topic that you would love for me to cover or somebody that you would like to see on the show on Holistically Speaking, send me a message or a comment. Leave it on social media, or you can even leave a comment wherever you're tuning in. I read them always, and I appreciate you being part of the process. And as we get ready to jump into this new year, why not join me down in sunny Florida? I'll be in Orlando, January 24th through the 28th. I'm speaking at She Podcast Live Unplugged, and then I'm going to stick around for the rest of the Podfest Expo, which runs through the 28th. Why not join me? I shared a link in the comments to get 20% off your ticket to She Podcast Live, and I would love to see you down there. As always, a big thank you to my friends at 2 Market Media for editing this podcast. And of course, my dear friend Lipode Redding for bringing the music, bringing his voice, bringing his talent year after year since our very first episode on Holistically Speaking. And of course to you for your patience, your support, your curiosity, for being here and tuning in. I'm glad that you are on this ride with me. I am sending you an abundance of love and light as we head into 2024. Let's make it count and be kind to our minds. And remember always, I love you, I believe in you, and I will see you next year.